Now we're ready to look at our first actual pieces of piano music. And we're going to be looking at pieces from our piano book for this semester, Mikrokosmos by Bela Bartok. So let's take a look at the first full page of music in the book, and this is going to be page 12. And we see here at the top of page 12, our first piece, piece number 1. Now, the first thing I want to say is if you don't have a piano yet, don't panic. Everything that we do in this unit is going to be away from the piano. And then in the second unit, we will come back and actually work at the piano. But let's take a look at musical example number 1, or piece number 1, and see if we can figure out at least some of the things that we recognize. So here are some things that we recognize. First of all, we see a staff with the treble clef up here. We've seen that before. We see a staff with a bass clef down here. We see that these two staves are joined together with a bracket and a line. It tells us that that's going to be a grand staff. Next to the bass clef and the treble clef, we see a time signature, 4/4. And remember that 4 at the top is going to tell us that there are going to be 4 beats in every measure. Above that, we see this, quarter note equals 96. That is a tempo indication that tells us the goal tempo of this piece is going to be to play the quarter note at 96 beats per minute. And we know that unless somebody tells us differently, in this piece of music, the treble clef, since this is for piano, the treble clef will be the music that we play in the right hand. The bass clef will be the music that we play in the left hand. And from there on in, pretty much we know what's coming up. We see a bunch of musical symbols here. We see, let's start with the treble clef. We see a half note, followed by another half note, followed by a whole note, followed by a half note, another half note, and then a half rest. And then the last 4 measures, we see a bunch of half notes, and then we end on a whole note. So these are all things that we've seen before. Again, we know that the half note means hold this pitch for 2 beats. The whole note means hold this pitch for 4 beats. And then the half rest means be silent for 2 beats. And then we see a similar configuration here in the left hand. We see half notes, whole note, half notes, half rest, half notes, and then finishing off again on a whole note. The one symbol that we might not have encountered yet, or actually, I'm sorry, the 2 symbols that we have not encountered yet are, first of all, the symbol at the very end. This is a bar line, but it's a bar line with 2 lines. One of them's thin and the second one is thick. And we call this a double bar. And the double bar tells us usually that we've come to the end of a piece. The end of every piece in Mikrokosmos, you will see a double bar line. That tells us that we've come to the end of the piece. And then we see these lines that are sort of drawn from this note here over to this note here. We see one over here, and then down here. Those lines are called slurs. And we'll learn about slurs a little bit more in the next unit when we actually get to the piano. But a slur is just a musical symbol that tells us to connect a group of notes when we play them. So rather than playing them detached, we will connect them. And we'll learn how to do that at the piano in the next unit. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to see what are we going to do with this information. How are we actually going to perform these first 3 pieces of Mikrokosmos if we're not going to do it at the piano.